So basically, tarot began the same as money. Tarot is money. When money cards were created in China, before that people used coins, and then they developed this system of stamping on a piece of paper as a banknote, and that became money. And then people started gambling with that. And then after some time they said, yeah, let's not just use actual money, let's just make fake money to gamble with that as well. And then from that they made playing cards, that was gambling, and then that came along the Silk Road to the Middle East.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blue Hour podcast, where we explore the minds and the worlds of visionary artists and creators. For this month's full moon, I have the chance of showing you the work and the mind of Safa Mirror. Safa is a fascinating artist who weaves together so many different threads in her work, from performing ancient Sufi poetry to conducting deep research into Middle Eastern mysticism. She has incredible ability to bridge Eastern and Western spiritual traditions, bringing new life to the words of poets like Rumi and Hafez through her performances. What I find particularly interesting about Safa's work is how she combines her artistic practice with tarot readings, creating this unique space where research, performance, and divination all come together. So you're in for a very fascinating conversation about art, tarot, and esoteric history, and the mysteries that connect different spiritual traditions. So let's jump right in.
Welcome to the Blue Hour podcast. Thank you for coming to meet me here, and it's been an exciting one, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
Excited.
Yeah, so I know you a bit of what you do, but I wanted to keep the surprise of all the nuances of what you do, because I think it's very complex.
Yeah.
But I know it a lot of it is through poetry and the spiritual sciences that you study that it infuses in your interpretation of some ancient Sufist poetry. And can you describe?
Not ancient.
Not ancient?
No, ancient is pre-medieval, is called ancient.
Okay.
But no.
Yeah, so if you want to you can start just giving a brief description of what you're currently doing.
You can tell by my precision about the terms and words. I have a background in science. I studied metallurgy and material science in Iran, in Tehran. So, and one could say it's the descendant of alchemy. So I basically know alchemy, like the real alchemy, as I can tell what this is made of and how the molecules work in it. So I kept that scientific approach, even though I was always spiritually inclined growing up. And I was a practicing Muslim until I was 23-ish. And then due to political things, I was like, this is not okay at all. And it was then that I went into the more spiritual path, but it was more on the Western New Age spirituality.
Okay.
Through YouTube and works. Spirit Science also was a really inspirational YouTube channel.
YouTube, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from them too.
Yeah. But I always wanted to be a film director. And I was introduced to theater, and that's what I did for most of my 20s in Iran. I was working in film and theater. I was a sound designer, director, writer, actor, all of this. But there was always this link and this connection to the beyond. And then I came to Europe. I came to study theater at Utrecht University, Netherlands. And it was there that I was kind of weirdly called to buy a tarot deck when I arrived. And I didn't know which deck to buy. I didn't know anything about tarot. So I went to a shop and there were all these decks, and then I saw one which was the Hobbit Tarot. And I love Lord of the Rings, been really influential in my growth. So I was like, this is my deck, and I bought it. And it felt as if I found what was missing from my hands. I don't know if you've seen Sweeney Todd. There is a scene that he digs up the razor and says, "Alas, my arm is complete again." And I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt when I started doing tarot. It was so instant magic happening. So I started to dive deeper into it. And since I was a nerd and scientific, I went into the whole history of Hermetic philosophy and esotericism, the roots of the tarot from the Golden Dawn to the French Tarot de Marseille to Italian Renaissance, and then going deeper back into Egypt, Mamluk decks, and then China and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And through learning the history of the tarot, I kind of, discovered all of the different nuances that it has and the influences that it has.
Do you think you can, in a very concise way, like you describe the origin of the tarot, like the main...
Yeah. So basically, tarot began the same as money. Tarot is money. When money cards were created in China, before that people used coins, and then they developed this system of stamping on a piece of paper as a banknote, and that became money.
Mm-hmm.
And then people started gambling with that. And then after some time they said, let's not just use actual money, let's just make fake money to gamble with that as well. And then from that they made playing cards, that was gambling. And then that came along the Silk Road to the Middle East, in Iran especially. We have the Mongol invasion to thank for that, because it opened the way for that. And then in Iran, the tarot cards were named Ganjafe, which was the older version of it. And then a lot of things happened there. Finally, they went into Egypt through the Mamluk era, and there they had these cards, which was called Naib va Maloik, which were kings, rulers, and deputies. And that was the first card that actually resembles the tarot that we have today. Before that, it was different. Mm-hmm. And these cards went to Spain and Italy. And there they added the major arcana to it, the 22 cards. And that also has a fun story. I will just say quickly, they used to play this game where one of the suits would become a trump deck. So at this game, for example, the sword suit is the winner suit. So they would play this kind of game. And then when it came to Italy, they decided, let's just add a separate deck as the trump deck.
Okay.
So that we don't have to choose a deck. So they added that, and the symbolism of the major arcana is a story that, that's a big story. We don't know. We don't know for sure. There's some theories, but the main one is there were some ideas about during the Renaissance, some stories around that time, and they just put all of that into the cards. And then after that, when it went to France and it became Tarot de Marseille, which was printed, not handwritten, the image solidified and tarot spread all over Europe. And then around 18th century, when the colonialism was working a lot and all of these different knowledges from different places, especially Egypt, was coming to Europe, they started to develop these myths and stories around the tarot that, it comes from Egypt. It has this ancient hieroglyphic wisdom inside it, which was not true. Mm-hmm. And they made up a lot of things. And scientifically speaking, the main reason is tarot has its roots in Neoplatonism, the numbers. Mm-hmm. It's quite easy to attach meanings to it. You have numbers and you can do a lot of things with numbers. So that's what happened. And then when it came to England, all of these ideas from France, they came to England at the end of the 19th century, Victorian era. There was a lot of extra fancy, imaginative things happening about the one truth that they were trying to find. And that's where we have the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that they created the structure of their mystical and esoteric system around the tarot.
Okay. And so, what year would that be, roundabout?
1890s, something like that.
Okay.
And it was out of the Golden Dawn that we have figures like Edward Waite and Crowley, Aleister Crowley, who made the famous tarot decks that we know today. And they were the continuation of that. One last piece of the puzzle is Pamela Smith, who drew the pictures of the tarot, of the most famous tarot, which is called Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But I call it Pixie Tarot because Pamela Smith did most of the work and she was not paid well for it. So I think with Pixie Tarot, we can give credit to her as as it is due.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did was, she was the first person who drew the minor arcana cards. Before that, there were like 6 swords or 6 wands, or 5 coins.
Yeah.
But she was the first one who drew images, and she was inspired by theater scenes. A lot of the characters that you see in the Pixie Tarot are actresses, real characters that she just drew them. And with this artistic expression, she changed history of tarot from this rigid system into you can draw it the way that you like. And now we're living in the age of tarot, where tarot is a device and a tool that you can use.
It seems like tarot also, like the way like I understood Thoth, like the Thoth deck, like in the way Crowley wanted to bring it back, give it like a more, bring the complexity from within it and open it up a little bit more so it's more complex. And for his interpretation was that like humanity's consciousness is also evolving, and therefore the tarot, which represents the kind of the collective consciousness, or like the sum total of possibilities, has also to follow that.
Exactly.
Do you think that was the case also back when it was invented? Like, why was it invented in a subjective way?
Well, when it was invented, it was the device to play games with. That was the main idea.
But you think
behind
there's
it.
another deeper?
But yes, that was the main one. And then they created other things next to it. 2 main other uses of tarot has been seen in history. One is for education. They would just use these cards to, we have it today as well for children. We use cards. Back then they would use the tarot also for some teaching, especially morality teachings. That's what the main reason of the major arcana designed the way that it is. It talks about how the universe is created, what are the moral virtues, justice, temperance, all of these things.
The hero's journey also.
Exactly. And then you have the third reason, which is more close to what you're saying, an esoteric system behind it. Now, this one, we don't have solid proof of it, but there are some notes to it. For example, the Solabusca tarot deck, which is one of the older Italian decks that we have found. And it's so enigmatic. We don't understand what it is. It has the same structure, 22 cards major arcana and 56 cards of the minor arcana, but it doesn't follow the same system. It doesn't follow the same story. It's so weird. And for people who are esoterists, when they look at it, they definitely think, yeah, this is used for a certain kind of initiation. You can see it inside it. But most of these decks are lost. And this is one of the sad things about the history of tarot that people don't know. A lot of decks, like there are tarot printing companies that are lost. No card from them exists. We just have written things like, yeah, I bought this deck that was printed from 1562 until 1612, but no cards of them survive. So either in the future, more decks will be discovered, or we might never know the truth.
I see tarot like, because of course what you see is a work of art, right? It's the work of art of an artist. I see a parallel between like art. Like that's why art history, there's some major players that we remember still because they create a work of art that reflects something deep within the psyche.
Yeah.
In the same way, it feels like these decks are representation of the consciousness of that time. It was a mirror that's been printed on of like how people perceive reality. And perhaps at the beginning, the spirituality was, I don't know, probably more, if it was meant as a game, it was less serious, or it was less, it was, I don't know. I'm curious to see like what would this correspondence
It's
be?
more the mystical and the spiritual and the esoteric practices existed, and they were inside the society, but in different layers, in different places and different groups of people. And then we had the artists who would get inspired by different things and add some of those data into their work. But personally, I don't think there was an esoteric person thinking, I'm going to create a deck for that.
Well, it's like
something that happened over time.
It feels like it's also like a lot of art that is created today.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people, they channel a lot of stuff, like, but they don't necessarily are aware of it.
Yeah.
So from perspective, from like 200 years later, you look back, you're like, oh yeah, he was actually representing something that is common in the minds of most people at that time.
Yeah.
But for him, it's his personal experience. It's like, I'm living this. But all of our artists are channeling energy of the masses.
Yeah. And also what you say reminds me of this, or like I find a parallel with the fact that 4 of the most important tarot decks in history, we have a male writer who talks about the deck and creates the system, and we have a female painter who draws it. So the main 2 ones that we know is the Pamela Smith and Edward Wade, and Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. So this kind of reminds me, like, because there is an esoteric mind behind it, but the artist must be so grounded and they must be a student of the occult or the esoteric, rather than the person who wants to translate it. Because I think that distance that you have from the knowledge helps your creativity in a certain way.
That's a good point. That's why when I work with the artists, like it's good to have both. Like, okay, you created this, and perhaps it's good to look back. Like I like to, with artists, to look back at their work and study what their unconscious was trying to process at that time of their lives, to see the timeline of where their soul is bringing them. You can look and study the past artworks. And it's so in this way the study becomes like the rational part of this irrational thing that you channel, and you think you understand. Like people give all sorts of descriptions of their work, you know, in very poetic ways, but often there is some truth that escapes us. I think that's
what the study of esotericism in academia does, and that has been my main approach towards spirituality in the recent years, where when you look at, for example, Crowley or another like Hermes, or all of these characters in history which were quite phenomenal occultist magicians, and then the study of esotericism just goes into understanding who these people were. What were their cousins like? What was the society they were living in? How are their language back then? To just kind of understand every little minute detail about their lives and see how that influenced what the thing that they were saying. And I find that a really grounding way of studying tarot for myself.
Yeah, definitely. But you also have your intuitive way of doing it as well, because like if you're just literally reading what you've studied, like it's hard to like connect things. You almost have to zone out in this bigger realm that connects things for you.
It's this, they say, well, Crowley says, the study of tarot, you have to do 3 things. You study the history of it and the techniques and all of that. You meditate and you practice. These are the 3 things that you should do. And by practice, again, you have 2 things. First, doing tarot readings for yourself and recording it and see what it is that you saw and what was the outcome in the end, and have all of that as a kind of your magical records. Or is the second part of practice is giving tarot readings to others. And that is a really good thing. That's what most people do. They let their intuition flow when they're giving reading to somebody else who is not themselves. So they have this, they know that their ego is not involved. So they create this flow, and based on the reaction that the person gives, or if they're going to come back again or not, or how many views they get on Instagram, or how many likes they get, they feel if they're on the right path or not. And I did that for the first year of my practice. And then after that, I went a bit deeper to, no, I need to learn how to do tarot readings for myself and understand how it works.
It's funny, another creative that I had on my podcast that's going to be in season 2 as well, Safa Mirror. She gained a lot of traction on social media because she writes small text every few days when she feels intuitively like the message is coming. I don't know if she used tarot to channel it or not, but the messages, like every time I saw them, I was like, wow, it seems like so accurate. It's so precise, but it feels like it's for me. But then there's like 2,000 people that like the message as well. So that's why I'm like, okay, she's definitely tapping onto something bigger than her. And that's the proof of it. So I had her on my podcast, and it was a very interesting also to see her astrology, because then you can start to connect people that are actually connected to like the scorpionic channels, and like receive.
Did she identify as like a seer or something?
I don't think so. I guess she would have mediumship type qualities to her. I don't know if she identifies with it.
But she didn't explain her method.
No, I didn't ask at that time the method, but I would be curious to have her back on to see.
Okay.
Yeah. But you too, I saw your chart. You have a exalted moon in Taurus. So basically, like the moon in her own sign in Cancer, very reflective, able to reflect reality and get unconscious reflections of it.
Yeah.
But then in Taurus, they say like in Cancer it's at home, and in Taurus it's at work.
Yeah.
So your moon is at work, it's actively, so that a lot of the channels have this placement because they have the ground to receive the information without getting lost in the realms.
Yeah.
So what is your experience with channeling?
So you always say, yeah, I see everything. It's like everything. And I know everything. But I choose to believe it or not. And I used to doubt that I should believe it or not and just be like, no, this is just, it's just your autism or something that is making you analyze everything and make a narrative.
Yeah.
But since I started to do tarot, and since I'm getting older and a bit wiser and have some experiences, and I feel more grounded in who I am and how the universe is working, I see something and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep this vision and see how it unfolds. And then it always unfolds the way that
without judging it.
Without just
let it,
keeping it there. And it has become one point of my career as a kind of a consultant, that I see myself more of a hermit than a hierophant. So the hierophant is a teacher, and it learns you, like reads your chart and knows what you're doing and keeps a track of where you're going, and then you have to keep coming back to the hierophant. It's like a priest, like someone who teaches you the ways of the spiritual path. But a hermit is just walking his path, and then you suddenly come across him and he says, oh, this is what you want to achieve in life? Yeah, this is the way, go do it. And a hermit doesn't have anything to gain from you doing that or not doing that. It's not going to prove anything to me. And that's my most attitude that I have with the visions that I see. Like, if you ask me something, yeah, I will tell you something. But I'm not going to tell you something that is going to disturb what you're doing already or create a certain kind of responsibility and karma for me. Which, to be fair, my master is telling me it is a bit because I don't want to take responsibility for stuff. But also I'm young. I'm like 33.
So that was maybe the Saturnian too, like the Saturnian part that we discussed.
Exactly.
And it's funny because right before you arrived, I have a show in Montreal in September, and there's 3 paintings, and they're my first paintings I did that they're showing like
nice.
6 years later. And so he was calling me for me to describe it to him so he can understand them for making like the show. And one of them is the Hermit.
Oh, nice.
And it's based on the tarot, the Hermit. And
which image of the Hermit? Or is it like your own image?
My own image of the Hermit. But it's based off the Thoth. I know, the Rider-Waite. So it's the pixie, and it's the one with the sun and the lantern. Yeah. That lights up the landscape and lights the staff of Caldeus on top of the mountain.
Nice.
Staff of knowledge. So it's funny, like that you say. I have had to go through the process of me painting it. And the way you described it is, I like it. It feels like in this painting, it's a huge landscape, and there's a hermit that's this big in a 4 by 6 feet painting.
Oh.
And he has his little lantern, tiny like this, and he shines light. And most of what you see is just a landscape. But there's a tiny hermit, and on top of a mountain, there's his torch that's just giving light to all of nature, all of the world, but in silence, secretly. Like he's just walking his path, his little lantern. That's what you're feeling in your life.
Yeah, right now. At least right now.
Yeah.
But also my birth card is Hermit. So
there's also what is it called? The personality types. There's one that's the Hermit.
Yeah. That's
I'm the Hermit, I think.
Yeah, it's completely different system. same roots, of course.
Yeah.
What the Hermit does in the tarot is a bit different from the personality type that they say. Major Arcana are not personality types so much.
Yeah, they're more bigger, like chapters in your life.
Yeah, they're like a character, not a personality.
So which archetype are you playing out in this phase of your life?
Depends who is in front of me. Because
let's say if you zone out, like from like your life is finished and you zone out and you look at this chapter, which chapter are you in?
I'm just starting my business. I'm just trying to bring my voice out and help people. It's been not a year. I started giving tarot readings professionally. No, not professionally, consistently. I was doing it before. Consistently since January. Now I am starting to give workshops. So I'm starting to move from Hermit more towards Hierophants. If I do a workshop, then people are going to come. And I've been giving workshops, of course, but they all always still be in Hermit vibes. Just they come to the workshop and they leave. And now I'm gonna give like courses. So it's gonna be some few months, and get to know people and teach them things.
That's nice.
And there was this interesting feeling that I had that when people were asking me questions about spiritual matters or tarot, and the way that I was answering them, I just took a step back, as you just said, and I was like, oh shit, I would have loved to have a teacher like myself when I was 20. This is exactly the kind of answers that I wanted to have.
Well, that's when you know you're aligned with your truth, because the obstacles you went through were designed for you to find those answers, and that's how you can serve your community.
Yeah, exactly. It's people don't notice how spiritual communities from all of the different ranges from yoga practitioners all the way to deep occult, esoteric, Thelemite, Satanist, even all of the spectrum, there's a lot of toxicity that is hidden and people don't see it, and it's not addressed.
Like what? Like, do you have an example that you've encountered?
The biggest one is the narcissistic dynamic of teacher-disciple. It's something that is inherent in almost every spiritual practice, that you have to listen to what the teacher says.
Yeah.
And even if it is difficult, it's because your ego is saying it's difficult.
Right.
So they design a system in which they destroy a teacher during their practice until they become a teacher that is worthy to be a narcissist. That's how they do it. But in this economy, in this capitalistic system, in this realm, everybody who goes to India for 2 months and then comes back and wants to teach yoga, you haven't done the work for it.
Yeah.
But inside the yoga, there is this, not yoga specifically, but all of them. And if I insult anyone or offend anyone with the way that I'm describing the relationship between disciple and master, I'm just going to say that I'm specifically talking about Sufism that I am part of. Like, this is how it is there. And reflections of it are in other ones as well. So I am taking accountability for the system that I mean.
I've spoken with lots of people. I know it is, like, spiritual narcissism is a thing, and it's a big trap. That's why, like, the teachings I've recently stumbled upon that I resonate with the most. Have you heard of Alice Bailey?
Oh, so familiar.
It's very connected with theosophy. Like, it's in the same time period. But it's all very Aquarian teachings. And Aquarian is like very individualistic in the way, like, the more individual you are, the more you can have an impact on the collective. So all the teachings, there is no like structures, there's no meetings. It's basically you do your own practice. They give you a structure, you follow it as best as you can if you want to, and you find your own truth. There's nothing that is said. You plant the seed, and whatever answer comes will guide the next step. So it's a program that's meant for you to be your own teacher. And there's a structure to become your own teacher. And you never meet anyone like in person.
Nice.
They have collective meditations that is just a blank screen on YouTube or Instagram Live. And you just follow the meditation, and everyone meditates at the same time for the same type of collective light in the world.
Nice.
And for me, that is the way of the future. These kind of hierarchical materialistic
yeah
spirituality disciplines feels like they're on the decline, and we see it right in the religions around the world too. Even the hierarchy in the religions are starting to be disintegrate. So I get exactly what you mean.
But the issue with that is the lack of community.
It's an invisible community, but you're right that
because there are things in community that nothing can replicate in a different form.
But I think in the same way, like it brings out your individual flavor, and once you find this flavor, you're just more confident in who you are, and naturally you will find your own community in your own specific realm. Like for me, Rosenborough, I'm creating my community. I'm not part of a community, but I feel like I'm building something for people to relate to and eventually create a community. And I think also that's cool. And instead of having big communities, big religions, smaller communities that all kind of connect with other small communities, and it's like a big web of smaller communities. I think that's anyway how I perceive the future. If it's gonna happen like that or not.
Please let it happen like that. Communities that don't exceed 150 people. That's the dream. But
that are open to everyone, right? It's like all about openness. What is my specialty? What can it offer to yours?
Exactly.
And like, what can I receive from yours? What can I give? That's, I think, that's how it has to be.
Those were the days when this was happening.
What do you mean when?
Like thousands of years ago, this is how we lived. But then there was aggression, and there was the quality of life was not okay, so you needed more resources. So that's why we went into the procedures of killing each other over bigger communities.
So I wanted to ask you about the poetry you're doing and all this work of researching. Like, what is it about?
So I was telling the story of my life, and then we went into the tarot.
Oh yeah, true.
But so during COVID, we were all locked up, and I was doing tarot. And then, do you remember the conjunction? Of course, everybody remembers the conjunction.
I was not doing astrology back then.
You weren't doing. Oh, yes. So it was like the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Huge event for everyone. And mine was also quite intense. I fell in love with a woman, and I read her a poem of Hafez, who is a Persian poet. Hafez is this Farsi poet. And back then I wanted to reconnect with my roots, so I was reading Farsi poetry again, Rumi, Hafez, Sadi, Shahnameh, all of those. And then I just sent her, this woman, a poem by Hafez. And she said, could you translate it for me? And I just started translating on the spot. I would read and then tell her what it is. And it was so intense, and we fell in love immediately, and then we got married later, and it was so intense, and we got it tattooed on our arms, the poem.
Wow.
And that was when I began translating Farsi poetry into English in a performative way. And it's been going on for like 3 years now. It's one of my main things, trying to kind of decolonize the way that this poetry has been translated into English, the way that they talk about Rumi and Hafez and Sufism in general is really stripped all of its cultural and religious significance from it. Not that it shouldn't be done. There are many practitioners like myself also who want to remove the religious Islamic aspect from it and have a more nuanced approach to it. But this act should not be done by a white American who historically has been colonizing, cultural appropriation and all of that. So this has been one of my other side things.
So when you say performance is in the sense of like reading it in the public, do you do also dance or like other types?
Mostly reading it in the public, because this poetry is all symbolic poetry. They are all a lover serenading a beloved.
Okay.
Using terms like wine, drinking, roses, different things in society, just using this palette of words to describe the love that they have for this beloved. And through the way that they express their love, they convey their teachings in Sufism. And so I have to translate. When you want to translate, you can't just be like, okay, Rumi is saying your cheeks are as red as a rose and your lips are as precious as a ruby. So I can translate that, but you don't understand what he's talking about. You find it beautiful, you find the emotions, but there are technical terms. The cheeks being red means that you're opulent, that you have prosperity, and the lips being ruby, it means union, all of these things. So what I do is I try to explain the euphemism and the allegory and the symbolism using my experience as a Sufi and as a queer person and as a Middle Eastern living in Netherlands. Because Sufi path is difficult, and most of this poetry is to express, I love you so much, but you are separated from me and I can't be with you, and it's so hard and it's destroying my body, but I will keep to the path to be with you. That's the main point of the poetry. And I go on stage and I say, yeah, I'm living here as a Muslim, but everybody is so mean and everybody is so Islamophobic and they want to kick me out of Europe because of the things that I say and the activism that I do, but I am so in love with this path that I will stick to it. And through this, creating this emotion inside the people, they understand what the poetry is about.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That feels so unique, like only you could.
Yeah, no one can do this. Yeah.
But also, again, it kind of represents a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Through your voice, you're demonstrating something that is affecting a lot of people. That's beautiful.
And my favorite part about it is I talk about queerness also as well, and there's a lot of parallels between Sufism and queerness. Basically, the two main ones. Both Sufis and queer people are discriminated against in their communities. The Sufis are seen as heretics among the Muslim community, and they were like, go away, just like the queers. And also, both are about intense love. That I am willing to have this love either for someone who is the same sex as me or someone that I see in the mirror as a woman. I am willing to experience this love and dedicate my life to this love, even if it means that I am rejected and exiled from my community. And when I talk about queerness with Sufism, the people that resonate the most are queer Muslims in this community in Netherlands, who have nothing to look up to. They don't understand what the queerness is in the West, and they can't go into their community as well. So they're like in the place like, and I come in and I'm like, okay, let me tell you about Rumi and how Rumi was queer. And they feel joy. That's one of my loving ways to do it.
So this is relatively new since the pandemic that you started delving into that. And now I'm guessing it's gaining momentum with time and you're getting bigger and bigger crowds too.
Yeah.
And you're more known for that.
Slowly, yeah. And I still am trying to figure out what is the perfect way to go for it. I did try to, get PhD to learn about Islamic studies and learn about the language or esotericism, how Sufism has been translated, and trying to, through academia, explain how Sufism works. But I'm more and more realizing, if I do a PhD and go into academia, I'm just going to enter an echo chamber that is not, it's going to like shut me up and suffocate my voice. But if I'm out in the street performing here and there for people, like podcasts like this, it's much better and it resonates more with people.
Yeah.
But it's it's artist life, difficult life. But it's slowly getting better. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I really like that you're actually going for it,
Yeah.
Without too much fear and
that's the Sufi way,
following the passion. I see that you have a few props on stage here.
So these are my weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, that's the Golden Dawn.
This is the Golden Dawn Tarot by Sheikh Cicero. And oh my god, the name of the other lady, I don't know. This is the newest deck that I bought, and I'm so much in love with it because I can do this.
because they're flexible?
Yes, no other tarot deck is this flexible.
Okay.
And I'm like, yes, I can
More
enjoy
malleable.
it. Yeah. And also I really like the paintings, the drawings. The amazing thing about this is that the way that they used colors is that they use, I think it's called negative colors, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have the yellow and you have the purple.
The complementary.
The complementary colors. So if you stare at it for like 5 minutes, they switch and the colors change.
Mm-hmm.
And the color themselves is not arbitrary as well. It's related to the color scheme of the Golden Dawn. So
That's cool.
it's really interesting deck to work with. And I also love the fact that it's so simple. It's like doodles even. Like the Pamela Smith is trying to be realistic and Frida Harris is surrealistic. But this one is just so cute.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, I've been doing readings with this in the past month.
Do you want to do like a little live reading for the audience?
For you, I would do it. For the audience, I'm a bit
It's gonna be
still not ready to
Okay, well,
put a reading like that. I do public readings a lot, actually.
let's
but
do one. If you want to like just draw like a few cards. How do you work usually? Like, let's say you see a
Oh, I do.
Is
a
it
lot
like
of things.
I come with my intention, or you kind of have a message?
So
for me,
basically,
or-
I do. Yeah, people can use this themselves as well and say in the comments how it worked out. So I do two kinds of readings. One I call manifesting, and the other I call processing.
Okay.
So manifesting is you want something to happen, or something is about to happen and you want it to go in a perfect direction that you want. And the tarot kind of tells you, okay, if you do this, it will happen. Or kind of give you some guidance or some tools to get the thing that you want. And processing is that, no, nothing specific is going to happen. You just want to get some insight or some knowledge or some new perspective about a certain aspect of your life to help you process how you're going about it.
So how about we do one about the podcast?
Okay.
That would be pretty relevant.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Like
So-
processing, like where this podcast is going and what is the potential if it unfolds in its
Okay.
expansive way, and like perhaps hints on how to.
I invoke Yahoo for you to call upon the great angel Ru, who is set over the operations of this secret wisdom, to lay his hand invisibly upon these consecrated cards of art, that thereby we may obtain true knowledge of hidden things to the glory of thine ineffable name. So I want you to do one shuffle, like,
Just like
yeah, just okay. And yeah, now just pick a bunch of piles, like a bunch of cards, and just put it on the side and use your left hand.
like how many piles?
Just one. We're gonna do a quick one, not so much.
Yeah.
So this is a one card reading. I love one card readings because yeah, it's just me and the card, and it's difficult. Most people can't do it. So we have the Three of Cups.
Three of Cups.
So in my current understanding of the tarot, because it's constantly changing, I don't know what it's going to be in a few months even.
Mm-hmm.
In my current understanding of the tarot, I look at the Cups cards as hormones of the body. When our body are experiencing something from the outside, they produce these hormones to help us deal with that. We have estrous hormones, we have happiness hormones, anger, like all of those things. And each of the 10 of these Cups cards are talking about one hormone. And here we have the Three of Cups, which is the hormone estrogen, the female hormone, the feminine hormone, as they say it. But of course, hormones are really much more complex and all of these things. But basically the Three of Cups is about not a certain sense of self-confidence, but a certain sense that you are taken care of by the divine presence of the universe. You do not have to do anything. If you are feeling rage, you are given this rage by God. If you are feeling sorrow and depression, you are in your hot mess era and you are enjoying that because the universe has given that to you. If you are happy, whatever feeling that you're having, with the Three of Cups, there is this notion that this feeling is exactly what I need and this is exactly what it is here, and I don't need to do drugs or do something to oppress it or ride it. I'm just going to enjoy it and sit with it. So that's basically what the Three of Cups is about. And the Golden Dawn system, it is called abundance. And the abundance of it, you can see it in the Pixie Tarot with the three ladies having the cups and they're enjoying. There is this community around. And in the Thoth Tarot, you have the beautiful, one of the more beautiful cards. It's the Three of Cups of the Thoth Tarot with pomegranates and Persephone and all of that, which combine all of these things together are wanting you to solidify and ground yourself with the thing that you're creating with the podcast. So if you post a podcast online, I'm going to go a bit further back. If you ask someone to join the podcast and they say no, or if you try to do the podcast and something happens that you can't do it, and then you post it online, people don't like it that much, or people don't comment, or it doesn't do as well as you kind of thought it would, or any kind of rejection or downfall you experience, the Three of Cups is here to say all of that is for you to make it better as you go forward. And if you start to feel certain feelings about it, a certain kind of feeling of being rejected or feeling of abandonment or any kind of feeling that you might have, those feelings should not prevent you or make you change your direction. That's the most important message here, that the feelings that you get by the way that this work is proceeding should not change the way that you have your mind and your body and your calendar set in the direction. But those feelings are part of the situation.
So like if I can summarize to make sure I understand correctly, the podcast is in itself gonna trigger a lot just because I'm putting myself out there, vulnerable, but also the project is something close to my heart. So necessarily whatever comes up, and there will be a lot of things, and there have been a lot of things that you have tapped into, it's there to almost serve as a mirror for my emotions almost, so that I can live those emotions, but without becoming them and letting them alter the course of what is undergoing underneath the emotions.
Exactly.
The truth of the dryness of what's underneath without the water of the emotions.
And the final result of it will be this solidification and the groundedness that you will have. When you're looking at the minor cards, you should always look at the card that is coming next, which is the Four of Cups. All of these cards, especially with the Cups cards and the Sword cards, which are elements of air and elements of water, they're so elusive. They're always moving. So they're immediately going to go into the next card. So the next card is the Four of Cups, and that's testosterone, which is another layer of being solidified and grounded in your emotions. So what is going to happen at the end of the whole process is you will, by keeping yourself grounded during the turbulence of the podcast, when you go into the next project, you will have the abundance and also the emotional stability of the Four of Cups to be like, this one is going to be easier.
It's funny because like I see my life in the way you describe it, like when I look back, like when I do a project, a series of paintings, they are there to teach me one thing. When I start a new job in the past, it's there to teach me something. Rose Umbra is there to teach me to listen to my soul and not my personality. And then every aspect of Rose Umbra, like the podcast, is there to teach me something. And then every season of the podcast also feels like it's teaching me something. Season 1 was like put yourself out there. It's like being vulnerable, doing what feels in my heart without questioning it.
Yeah.
Without knowing what the outcome will be.
Mm-hmm.
The season just finished. We're filming season 2. And so it feels like now is the next level. Okay, this this instability that can come with the instability of this podcast, of finding the guests around the world and like making it into a thing. This is the initiation for that. After that, where I can establish myself more as a leader, perhaps in the in this field of visionary artists around the world.
Yeah.
But I need to make sure my emotions are stable and that I am not letting myself be too flowy.
Yeah.
Because spirit wants to use me, but it wants to make sure that I can follow the direction without. So perhaps what you're saying is that maybe season 2 was the initiation into the emotions to lead me to season 3, which
the way that you talk about it, it's a bit harsh on yourself. And when we're talking about the 3, we are a bit high up in the tree, you know. And so it's not so much so something practical that you should be aware of and okay, I need to change something or something like that. But it is more about you moving past the turbulence of the emotions, and then you see that you never went up and down as much as you thought you were.
Okay.
And then that emotion and that feeling sustains and remains with you. You know, I thought I would be more emotional, but I wasn't. The next time that I feel that I am being too emotional, I can trust that emotion and be like, no, this is the right amount of feeling rejected. I am feeling it and I am processing it, and and it's always gonna grow and become better and better.
The refinement of emotional understanding
Yeah.
is a big part of also of my own chart, like my own dharma. So that's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Thank
Do you have anything in Cancer?
Yeah, I have Jupiter.
Yeah.
And I have my moon. So.
A moon. Okay.
And Ketu. I have 3.
Ooh.
I have a lot of past life stuff.
Yeah.
Because of Ketu. And Jupiter amplifies all of this. So I'm very Cancerian. Like lots of water, lots of fire. I have lots of Aries as well. And my Mars in my first house, so that is also.
Oh, that's why you're feisty.
Yeah, feisty. I don't know if I would say that, but have the fire close to my to myself for sure. Cool. And what's the second tool?
So the second tool, that's Hafez, as I mentioned.
That's what?
The Farsi poet.
So
Hafez.
It's not a notebook, it's a book.
Yeah. So this the thing about Hafez, he was so skillful in creating this symbolic poetry that I talked about, that Iranians developed a system of divination with his poetry. Wow. That whenever Iranians have a question or a wondering, they would ask Hafez for guidance and randomly open a page and read the poem, and along the lines, there's a message for them.
Wow.
And this goes back even 30 years after Hafez's death, they were talk of this. So I can also imagine that even when he was alive, something like this would happen. Like, this is what I imagine. Maybe I will make a movie out of it someday. So Hafez was a court poet. So he would sing for the king. And this was their Friday nights. They would gather around, all of these poets, and there was drinking, there was music, there was wine, dancing. And then each poet would recite a poem. Most of it was addressed to the king and praising the king, serenading the king, saying, "You're such a great king, we love you." And then if the poem was good, the king would be pleased and he would pay them money. This was their job.
Okay.
And Hafez was really famous during his time. When he was alive, was famous, and he has a lot of poetry which is addressed to king, which shows that he wrote them to perform them in front of the king. And Hafez actually means someone who would sing, a singer. I imagine that Hafez would write a poem every week, and people would gather at the gathering, and they would be excited. Oh, I want to see what Hafez is going to sing tonight. And then he would start to sing the poem, and then he would say some words, and then people would hear it and be like, this is exactly addressed to me. What Hafez is saying is exactly as if telling me what to do with this situation that I have with my dad, for example. And they would get so freaked out, and they would give the title to Hafez, Lisan Ghaib, or Tongue of the Arcane. This is what Hafez is known for. He is a messenger of the realm of the mysteries. Wow. This is my main way of performing Farsi poetry, which is I explain the story that I just said, and then I say, let's do a Hafez reading. So let's have a question, and then I open the page and then see what it is about.
Okay, so
I think this, I'm going to do the mystical way, and whoever is watching, they can join in. So this is a message for them, whoever is going to watch. Yeah. First thing we're going to do is we are going to find our beloved. So this poem is going to be about a beloved and how you can serenade this beloved and kind of seduce this beloved to have sex with you, basically. So there are 4 beloveds that you can have. First, it's God. Yeah. You are on a spiritual path. You find yourself in a spiritual journey. There is difficulties. There are all of these things, and you want to know how you can reach God. So the beloved is God, or that soul divine thing that you find as your spiritual source. The second one is someone that you love. It can be any kind of love, but romantic love works the best. Someone that you really feel connected to, and maybe there is a problem with them, maybe they don't want to be with you, whatever it is. There is an earthly being that you have romantic or sexual attraction towards, and you want to woo them, and you want to have them closer in your life. The third one is another person, but you're not necessarily in love with them, but there is some dynamic going on. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a ruler, maybe it's your brother, maybe someone that you have a difficulty with, you're fighting, or you want them to do something for you. You have some expectation from them. They're not understanding what you're saying. And you want to use this poetry to explain to them what you want, what are your needs, what are your intentions, and kind of convince them to see eye to eye with you. Got it. And the last one, and most important one that I encourage everybody to have as this one, is yourself. It's a version of yourself in the future that you want to become. For example, a version of you with this podcast that has 2 million views. Yeah. Like you are looking at the screen and it says 2 million views. And you're like, I want to be this person. This person in the future is your beloved that Hafez is going to talk about. And Hafez is going to say how you can be united with this beloved, how you can become this version of yourself in the future. Got it. So now I'm going to recap, and I want you to choose the beloved that you have. The beloved either can be God, it can be someone you love, or someone you respect and you want them to listen to you, or a version of yourself in the future. Okay. Now that we have this beloved, we are going to ask Hafez to give us some guidance how to be united with this beloved. And I'm going to ask you to pick the poem for us. You can hold it in hand. ای حافظ شیرازی، تو کاشف هر رازی، بر ما نظر اندازی، بنما بر ما رازی. O Hafez the Shirazi, secret revealer are thee, gaze upon us thusly, recite to us some mystery.
Any page.
Any page. This one or this one? Okay. هاشا که من به موسم گل ترک می کنم، من لاف عقل میزنم، این کار کی کنم؟ مطرب کجاست تا همه محصول زهد و علم در کار چنگ و بربط و آواز نی کنم؟ از قیل و قال مدرسه حالی دلم گرفت، یک چند نیز خدمت معشوق و می کنم. کی بود در زمان وفا جام می بیار، تا من حکایت جم و کابوس کی کنم؟ از نامه سیاه نترسم که روز حشر با فیض لطف او صد از این نامه طی کنم. کو پیک صبح تا گله های شب فراق به آن خجسته طالع فرخنده پی کنم. این جان عاریت که به حافظ سپرد دوست روزی رخش ببینم و تسلیم وی کنم. So the first thing to understand about this poem is to see who Hafez is addressing in this poem, because he would address all of these different people in the poetry. This one, he is addressing the divine beloved God. He's talking about his Sufi experience in the process of being one with the one. And you can see it in this verse that he says, از قیل و قال مدرسه حالی دلم گرفت یک چند نیز خدمت معشوق و می کنم. I have grown weary of debates and the discourse of academia. I am going to, for a period of time, be in the service of my beloved and divine. The duality between the school or academia and debate and discourse, which is philosophical and talking about how the world works and this person said that and this logic is that, and doing service for the beloved and divine, being in the service of the ecstasy, doing drugs and doing all of that. So first we see that this poem is addressed to God. So Hafez is going all the way to the divine. Secondly, we look at the word that is repeated in all of the lines of the poem. It says, it is konam, which means I shall do this. As you saw in the word, in the verse that I just translated, he says, I'm going to stop going to academia and school and I'm going to do this service. So in all of the lines, Hafez is saying, I shall do this. This is the thing that is going to happen. And in this way, he is telling us that this is the path that I have chosen, and I shall be one with my beloved through this path, and I advise you to do the same as well. And the way that he says is, this is where actually Hafez becomes that Lisan Ghaib or tongue of the arcane that I talked about, that he has become one of the pillars of Iranian Sufism and Iranian mysticism. And all of the mystics in Iran and all of the spirituals, they look into Hafez and they want to be like Hafez to reach his level, because he has been immortalized in this poetry. He knew he's writing something that is going to be recited and read and be seen as a guidance for centuries to come. So here in this one, he says, I'm just going to say the first verse, هاشا که من به موسم گل ترک می کنم من لاف عقل میزنم این کار کی کنم. Alas, I shall never leave the wine and the drinking, because now it is spring, because I speak of wisdom and intellect, so I shall not do something that is unwise and folly. So a little context. The springtime is when the flowers are growing, everything is beautiful, and drinking wine is much better. So Hafez is saying, now that I am alive, now I am in this body, now I am capable of pursuing wine and ecstasy and spiritual matters and being one with the one. I, as a person who deem myself intellectual and wise, I will not do this. And I encourage everybody else to do the same as well. So with understanding the konam, the word that is repeated in all of the lines of the poem, the message that the Hafez wants to give is, keep with every instance of your body and every moment of your breath to the path of this love and this ecstasy and this joy that you have for the beloved. Each of the line is about the notion that we have a specific amount of time on this earth. We will lose our lives pretty soon. So the best thing that we can do during this period is to enjoy being in the ecstasy and being drunk in this love that we have. Second to last thing is I'm going to read my favorite verse among this. The verse that I think captures perfectly all of this poem. کی بود در زمان وفا جام می بیار تا من حکایت جم و کاووس کی کنم. Who and when in this life someone has seen fidelity and faithfulness, so bring a cup of wine so that I shall narrate the story of Jam and King Kavus. Jam and Kavus were two Iranian kings of the past, and they were seen as the greatest and the biggest. Mm-hmm. But Hafez is using that to say we all die, even if we are kings. This lifetime, this living experience is never faithful to anyone. It leaves us at a certain point. We lose the things that we want, even the most precious thing, our lives. Let's spend it on drinking. Bring me a cup of wine and I will tell you the story of Jam and Kavus so that you too get drunk and learn that this life is only for us to enjoy it in the ecstasy of the divine. And in the last verse, he says, این جان عاریت که به حافظ سپرد دوست روزی رخش ببینم و تسلیم وی کنم. This life that my beloved gave to Hafez just as a borrow, just to get it back, one day I shall see my beloved's face and I shall give away this life and give it back. So with the last verse, he says, all of this life that I've been given is given to me by my beloved. And one day I shall give it back. But the moment that I'm giving it back, it's not just that I'm going to die, I'm going to see my beloved's face again. I'm going to be reunited with my beloved. So I am counting the days until I die and I witness and I reunite the face of my beloved. This message of Hafez here is there is nothing more important and there is nothing more worth this life than the ecstasy and the joy and the drunkenness of reaching for the divine. And all of the work and all of the money and all of the schools and thought and intellect and debate comes not even an inch close to the truth and the reality of the beauteous face of the beloved when we are reunited after we're gone.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot to unpack in that, but the way you just put it at the end, it really makes it cohesive. And whatever I had inside of me kind of was well responded to.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious to know what people experience with this as well.
Hopefully they can just type it in the comments.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm really happy that was beautiful. These two, it's cool to talk about your art, but also now we see it in action.
Yes.
This intuition activated. It's beautiful.
Yes, I have it all the time.
And maybe to end, is there something we haven't touched upon that you wish I had asked you?
You did ask about the issues that I see in the spiritual, the toxicities. Yeah. I mentioned one, and I'm just gonna say another one, and then we don't need to get into it, and that is decolonization. So it's one of the main things that I'm doing, both with the tarot and also with this poetry, that there is this attitude with the especially online community of spirituality that is westernized, in the sense that they take all of these practices and traditions from different parts of the world, and through a Western perspective they try to use it for the benefit of the self or their community, without putting into consideration and account what the indigenous people of that practice, what they are experiencing in their lives. Basically, it creates bad karma, that you steal from another person's culture. Not you per se, but those people who translated these works. They were working with the British Museum, for example, which invaded the land and stole all their books and gave it to their scholars and said, translate this. So there is the history behind all of that that is tinged with darkness,
Yeah.
And of course, again, I'm going to take accountability for the fact that, for example, Islam did the same thing with the way that they approach the Greek philosophies and mathematics of India and all of those things, but they incorporated in the culture during that time. It was a different thing. And we are trying to decolonize that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the awareness of practices like yoga, practices like Sufism, and indigenous cultures of North America, they are being practiced without the knowledge of the people and the cultures that they come from. And yeah, I encourage people to follow authentic practitioners like myself. For example, when I'm talking about Sufi now, you see that it is all advertising myself.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other people who are trying to bring the truth of these cultures and bring it out and remove that colonial history that it has in the West.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's important in like all the aspects of life, like connecting to the roots of the teachings as well.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And do you want to leave people with how they can reach you if they want to work with you, follow you in the social media?
I have my Instagram, and I have also a YouTube channel, Safa Mirror.
And how do you spell that? Just
like SAFA MIRROR.
That's on
Safa
Instagram
Mirror.
and on YouTube.
Instagram and YouTube. Yes.
All right.
And
yeah. So well, thank you so much for sharing all that
Thank
wisdom,
you.
for the reading. I'm sure the audience will be excited to work with you, seeing like how it was. It was pretty precise, like how you mentioned it with one card. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you so much for coming.
It was really lovely. Thanks. It was a pleasure to be on this podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this was enjoyable. And if it was, don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And also, I wanted to share that I started a new vlog that I now posted the 3rd episode of, where I'm documenting my inner world and my painting process and how they are connected. And it's all about how the divine feminine mysteries need to come back to our awareness in order for balance to come back on Earth. So if this is something that might interest you, I'll link it in the description below. And until the next new moon, I'm sending you lots of love and light.